Hello aspirants, welcome to Bajirao Ias Academy interview guidance program. I am Surya. So in last few lectures we have discussed about the recently introduced interim budget, and this is the last lecture in the series of lectures in which we have discussing about the recent 2024-25 budget. Now, as I have already told you that the budget is also called as annual financial statement, and it is mentioned in the Indian Constitution as annual financial statement but not as a budget. So therefore, Article 112 of the Indian Constitution usually talks about the annual financial statement, and this annual financial statement consists of receipts and expenditure of the government of India for a specific financial year, and in this case it is 2024-25 financial year. Now this budget is called as interim budget because the budget has been introduced by the incumbent government which has been going for the polls, and the next government which came to power after the polls will introduce the full budget. Okay, so this is the quick glance of the budget that we have discussed yesterday. Now, as part of the interim budget 24-25, the government has made some of the important announcements. So it is very important that you have to understand all these announcements, the major announcements, and these announcements mostly include the previous schemes of the government and the performance of those schemes and initiatives which were launched by the government as part of its last 5 years tenure. So for housing, the government has launched the PM Awas Yojana. We all know that the government has launched PM Awas Yojana. So the theme of this PM Awas Yojana is housing for all. So the government has launched a scheme called PM Awas Yojana Rural or Gramin. So this is particularly aimed to provide or give deserving sections of the middle class a living in rented houses, slums, and chaws or unauthorized colonies to build or buy their own houses. So therefore, PM Awas Yojana has enabling these poor sections to own a house. So extra 2 crore houses were granted under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, and it will be made in the next 5 years, and this is also one of the most important announcement of the recent interim budget. So when we talk about the healthcare, several ambitious schemes were introduced as part of the healthcare. For example, PM Jan Arogya Yojana. This is providing health insurance for the different categories of the people, especially the people who are below poverty line. So PM Jan Arogya Yojana usually provide 5 lakh rupees of health insurance for every household who is poor, who is lacking the social security and safety nets. So therefore, the government will encourage vaccination for girls in the age group of 9 to 14 years, especially the girls who are in the adolescent age, and that is particularly aimed to prevent the cervical cancer. Now recently cervical cancer is also in news. Now cervical cancer is one of the most challenging problem that the women have been facing and suffering with. Okay, so this is usually caused by the human papilloma virus, HPV virus. Now the government has launched UWIN platform for managing the immunization and intensification of these efforts under Mission Indradhanush program. So as we have already know that Mission Indradhanush has been launched to track the immunization, or it is primarily aimed at immunization of children who will be impacted by 7 major diseases. That includes polio, mumps, measles, rubella, and several other diseases. So all these diseases will be covered under Mission Indradhanush, and in order to track the immunization, the government has launched UWIN platform. So healthcare or health cover or health insurance has been provided under Ayushman Bharat, or otherwise called as Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. So this scheme will be extended by the ASHA workers, Anganwadi workers, helpers, and ANMs. Okay, So we all know the role of the Asha workers and Anganwadis in immunization, providing nutritious food for the pregnant, lactating mothers and new child, and their efforts in immunization of children. Okay, so therefore the Ayushman Bharat cover would be further extended with the help of these Asha workers, Anganwadi workers and helpers. Now apart from above announced major announcements, the government will also take up several other initiatives. For example, the government will promote the blue economy 2.0. So we all have the basic idea about the blue economy. So this is usually based on aquaculture, not just aquaculture, it is also with respect to the livelihood of the farmers, and also sustainability, biodiversity conservation, biodiversity management and protection of the ecosystem. So blue economy 2.0 has been launched by the government of India. Now this is particularly aimed at the restoration and adaptation measures. So in the backdrop of climate change, plus global warming, it is very important, that it is very important we need a specific scheme which mainly focuses on restoration and adaptation efforts. Now coastal aquaculture and mariculture with integrated and multi-sectoral approach is also one of the objective of blue economy 2.0. So we all know about the production linked incentive scheme. The government has also launched productive linked incentive scheme. So this actually provide incentives for domestic as well as foreign industries based on their incremental sales or incremental production. So several sectors have been included as part of the production linked incentive scheme. So recently toys and leather have also been included as part of the production linked incentive scheme. Okay. Now, India plans to broaden its production-linked incentive scheme, and it includes toys, leather, footwear, and it is aiming to boost the domestic manufacturing and the export sector. So we have launched several programs like Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat and several other programs, and these programs are particularly aimed to strengthen or expand manufacturing capabilities as well as exports. Now if you look at the specific tax proposals that were introduced in the recent budget, so there were no changes were made in the tax structure, because the government keeping with the convention. So what is the convention? So there were no changes made relating to the taxation in the recent interim budget, and the same tax rates for direct and indirect tax including the import duties were retained. Okay, so no changes were made with respect to this tax structure. Now here in this infographic we have to understand where rupee comes from and where we spend on. Okay, so rupee has been coming from the borrowings and other liabilities. Around 28% of our total receipts usually comes from the 28% of our total receipts usually comes from borrowing and other liabilities. Now after borrowing and other liabilities, income tax has been contributing for the 19% of our total receipts. After that, the corporation tax has been contributing for the 17%. So this is also important for your prelims. Okay, so borrowing has been accounting for 28%, followed by income tax, it is 19%, and corporation tax has been contributing for the 17%. So after that, the GST and other taxes have also been contributing for 18% of our total revenue. This GST and other taxes comes under the indirect taxes. However, the corporation tax and income tax is categorized as direct taxes. So apart from that, the union excise duties have been constituting just 5% of the total taxes. And apart from that, the non-tax receipts, non-debt capital receipts and customs are also forms part of the receipts of government. Now after that, we will also discuss about the expenditure, where rupee goes to different sectors. Now around 20% of our expenditure is on the interest payments alone. Please remember, in previous slide we have discussed about the borrowings and other liabilities constitute 28% of our total receipts. So therefore, in order to ensure that we paid interest rates on time, we are paying around 20% of total expenditure on these interest payments alone. So after that, the government has been spending 8% of the total expenditure on the centrally sponsored schemes, and these are the schemes are usually sponsored by the central government itself. So subsidies have been contributing for 6%. What are the major subsidies? Subsidies include fertilizer subsidy, food subsidy, fuel subsidy, and even subsidy on electricity. So all these subsidies have been constituting around 6% of the total subsidies. On defense expenditure, the government has been spending around 8%. The central sector schemes involve 16%. Okay, so you have to understand the basic difference between central sector schemes and centrally sponsored schemes. So central sector schemes are usually implemented by the central government itself, or otherwise the centrally sponsored schemes, they are introduced by the central government, but they are implemented by the state government, and usually central government provide a funding of 60-40, and with respect to central sector schemes, the funding will be provided by the central government itself. Now finance commission and other transfer constitutes 8%, and state share of taxes and duties constitute 20%, and other expenditure, various other expenditure 9%, and pension funds 4%. Okay, so this is how the rupee has been going into the different areas in the Indian economy. So after that, we have to discuss about the certain positives of our budget as well as shortfalls in our budget. Now firstly, when we talk about the public investment, so the government a rise or 11% increase in the capital expenditure. Now what is a capital expenditure? Capital expenditure is something which usually creates assets, or it reduces the liabilities of the government. So therefore there is a 11% rise in the capital expenditure, and this has been signifying its importance in overall economic growth of our country. So after that, the state's fiscal health has also been improving, because the central government, as part of this interim budget, has extended 50-year interest-free loans to different states. Okay, so there will be conditionalities, but the central government has been extending 50-year of interest-free loans to the state governments. So therefore this is considered as a welcome move for the growth, both from the center as well as the state governments. So therefore this is in line with the fiscal federalism, and this comes in the backdrop that the state governments have also been arguing or demanding for more of fiscal federalism or more devolution of these fiscal resources. So after that, the central government has also spent on research and development. The expenditure which is spent on research and development has also significantly increased. A corpus of around 1 lakh crore in research and development, particularly for the private sector, and this will help in boosting research and development in India's R&D expenditure. So the ratio of R&D expenditure as a GDP, as a percentage of GDP, has remained stagnant at 0.8% for decades now. So therefore there is a need to significantly increase our R&D expenditure with respect to our GDP. Now if you look at the countries like Japan, they have been spending around 3.6% of GDP on research. However, if you look at India, it is just spending 0.8% of its GDP on research and development. So in order to become an innovative and technology driven economy, we need to spend more on research and development, similar to several other developed countries. So after that, we need to talk about the renewable energy aspect as well. So the budget which has been introduced has applauded the recently introduced PM Suryodaya Yojana. So earlier we have discussed about PM Suryodaya Yojana, and this is specifically for the rooftop solar energy. 1 crore households will install the rooftop solar panels on their houses. So therefore they will generate the electricity on their own with less dependence on grid or fossil fuel based energy resources. Okay, so the budget has uploaded this PM Suryodaya Yojana, and this is a solar rooftop in 1 crore households in India, lags behind in tapping the free natural source. So solar energy is usually considered as a free natural resource, and India still lags behind in utilizing this free natural resources. So therefore PM Suryodaya Yojana will help tap the free natural source of solar energy. And these are the major positives of this interim budget 24-25. So the budget also has certain shortcomings. So what are those shortcomings? So shortcomings in terms of allocation. So the budgetary allocations for several core schemes, when I say core schemes, so they are very important for social security and livelihood security and also income security of the people. For example, in rural areas, Manrega plays a very important role during the years of drought. Okay, so therefore the allocation has been disappointed for the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Scheme, and apart from that we can see the reduced allocations for Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation Scheme, Smart Cities Mission, and PM Poshan Yojana. So this scheme envisions nutritious India. Okay, so nutritious India. So on the other hand, Smart Cities program and Amrut mission are aimed at rejuvenating the urban infrastructure, so transforming the urban landscapes. So apart from that, we need to talk about the social sector, the focus of the social sector as well in this interim budget. Now in this interim budget, we can clearly see an approach from the government that indicates moving away from the provision of services. So they have also meant for neglect of basic education, healthcare and nutrition, because schemes like PM Poshan have seen reduced allocation from the government side. Now apart from that, for basic education, healthcare, the government has allocated a less number of resources in this budget. Now if you look at the foreign direct investment, so there have been more exits by the private equity capital from India. So much of FDI has flown into the services and only modestly in manufacturing sector, and this will also considered as a shortcoming in this budget. So even though we have a note to move away from China in terms of imports, so we still depend significantly on China, and we still have a lot of trade deficit with China. So the budget compositions displays areas of concern with respect to the dependence or trade with China. So the trade deficit with China has been steadily widening or steadily increasing from last few years, and it has been accounting for around 1/3 of India's total trade deficit. So therefore the focus should be on gradually reducing our trade deficit with China. So for that we need to either reduce our imports, or we need to focus on areas where we can import more items to China. So that will significantly reduce our trade deficit with China and overall trade deficit and current account deficit. So it also seems to ignore potential threats from arising from geopolitics, strategic risks they are posed by dependence on China for the critical inputs. So these are the major shortcomings along with the positives of this budget. So with this discussion, we have completed the budget in a very brief manner. So whatever we have discussed about this budget are very important for your exam, both for prelims, mains and even for the interview as well. Okay, so that's all in this lecture. Please like the video and also subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you have any doubts, any suggestions, please write those suggestions in the comment section. Thank you.